In fact, he said you should listen to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. And
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is Donna Grindle with Card and Compliance, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, David Sims from HIPAA for MSPs. How does this feel, David?
It feels strange.
Feels a little weird. We're having a Sadie Hawkins day. Trying something a little new this time because of the fact that I was in Key West and then fleeing Key West with my friends over Labor Day weekend, and we are still sitting here waiting for Irma and very worried about our friends and colleagues in Florida, and even, we know we're going to get at least a tropical storm up here, so pretty intense stuff going on. But David attended the webcast of the HIPAA Safeguarding Health Information Building Assurance Through HIPAA Security. Woo!
Mouthful.
But it's the OCR NIST Combo Conference on HIPAA security that's held every year, and normally I do it. And thank you to those listeners who knew that this is the one David missed last year.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So we're doing things backwards, and David's going to tell us what he learned in the webcast, and then I will get to ask him questions. And that we think this will probably take 2 episodes. It usually does, but then again, David's involved, so...
What you trying to say? I'm more concise and to the point.
So tell us a little bit about things, David. How you doing?
I'm doing good, but let me first say that, I do empathize with the fact that you're having to flee, but being somebody who's been out with you before, fleeing an area is pretty common for you.
You're so full of it.
The difference is 5 million people are fleeing with you.
I know, really.
But yeah, things are going good. By the time this one airs, I think I'll be in DC when this airs. So doing the unconvention, get that out of the way. Looking forward to that. But other than that, I think you're probably having not probably you are definitely doing a lot more than I am in preparation for the hurricane that's going to hit Monday in our area, Monday into Tuesday. So it looks like as we record here that we're going to get kind of grazed by it versus smacked in the face by it. But you're not going to get away from it either way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to us. It didn't matter what track it took. We were going to get some trouble. And these poor guys here are, we're like, we just want to let you know there's still going to be some crap, but at least it's going to be something that's, it's just a bad storm compared to what's happening to Key West and the rest of the state of Florida. So we're really worried about it because, just got back from Key West and was due to go to Sanibel, which is also supposed to take a direct hit from this thing. So 2 of my most favorite places in the world to go and make myself able to deal with David so I get my Zen moment. This could be a problem for all of us.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into your information to share. Oh, but first, a shout out to Jeff and the guys up in Albany, New York, not Albany like we say down here, who we've talked to about potentially doing a boot camp. And David doesn't even know. I talked to Jeff yesterday.
I do not know that. Yeah,
he doesn't. And we try to keep him mushroomed as much as possible. But David is going to learn that we're getting inquiries about doing HIPAA boot camps. And some of the guys, apparently Carla got an email from somebody in Hawaii. Yes, we would be interested.
Heck yeah.
We've gotten, the discussions from LA and now New York. Although, the New York may be for one big organization, but nonetheless, we've got a lot of discussions. So again, if you're interested in having us come and do our boot camp routine.
Routine.
Yeah, you had a nice card from Chris down in Jacksonville, and I hope you're safe, Chris. But
I got one too. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
And
I got a little fidget spinner and everything.
I know, it's awesome. Chris was in our last session, and he really nice note, but he said, I do not recall ever thinking I was bored or tired of the topics. So in the entire 2-day event, that was pretty awesome, because that's our objective, is we'll keep you scared to death or at least engaged. That's our attempt. But it was great that we've gotten all those good feedback. And so David, oh dear friend of mine, we also have our Help Me with HIPAA app.
Oh yeah, yes we do, and we have it on Android. Yes,
I know David's his email when I told him we'd gotten the confirmation was, my life is now complete.
I can pass away now in happiness.
We have one of these. All right, thank you very much. But it's certainly a very exciting thing for us to expand and be able to do other things. And then we also have, David will be at the Unconvention by the time this comes out. And then right after that, I'm at the Georgia HFMA Care Forum. And I'm now added in the Georgia AAP Pediatric Practice Managers Association on October 13th at Cobb Energy Center. And my Georgia Metro MGMA October 17th, and then Georgia HFMA. Now they want to see if I can move to the 9th. So either the 8th or the 9th, I'll be in Reynolds Plantation. And the 10th at the Georgia Association of Orthopedic Executives in Callaway Gardens. And we are currently taking a lot of discussions for a variety of different things, national conferences now in 2018. I've got 2 different national conferences we're talking to, and then the boot camp stuff is all for 2018. So we got a lot going on, buddy.
Yes, we do.
So
we're going to do some traveling.
Yeah. We'll be writing our songs on the tour bus and all that cool stuff.
I'm sure we could write some HIPAA songs.
Oh, no. All right, so let's...
So the big thing, of course, by the time this comes out, we're a little behind, but the big thing going on now is the Equifax breach. And I wanted to cover that a little bit, and this has nothing to do with the NIST OCR conference, but I do want to talk about it because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So there was a breach involved in Equifax, and just for those of you who don't know, by the time this comes out, it affected 143 million consumers. Now, think about this. They're saying this is half the U.S. population, but half the U.S. population, they're talking about consumers. So let's say, like, for instance, my family, we have 2 adults and 4 kids. Well, 4 that are now under the adult age. So we only have 2 consumers in our family of 6 people that live here. So if you're saying it's half the U.S. population, basically what you're saying is pretty much everybody that's a consumer in the United States has been affected.
Wow.
So, but the breach lasted from mid-May to July, and they put out some information about it, and they apologized for it and talked about how bad it was and all that. But the thing about it is this is the 3rd breach they've had in 2 years.
And you can't control whether or not they get your data.
No, they take your data, whether you want them to or not, and then they don't protect it. And then, I guess to me, to add insult to injury, then they offer me their credit monitoring service.
Talk about that. The other little pieces of controversy that's going on. So somebody's going to go get up on them.
Yeah. So we got a couple little things going on here. One is the fact that they found out that some of the higher ups in the company sold off a bunch of stock right before they made this public, like nearly $1 million worth.
Can you say insider trading?
Yeah. So that's going to be a story to watch. On the other side of the coin is that by opting into their free credit monitoring for a year, how nice of them, service, you also are waiving the right to have any personal or class action lawsuit against them. How slimy.
Yeah. I mean, this is the top edge of, like, well, I feel dirty just talking about it.
Yeah, so anyway, if I were you, Mr. and Mrs. Listener, I would not sign up for their credit monitoring. I would go to a third party. I like Xander Insurance. They have a good option there. ID Experts, which Donna uses, has a very good service.
They have a new product that allows you to provide your employees as a benefit of their job, and it's very cost effective. You know it is if I did it. But it's very cost effective, and you can add it as an employee benefit. Mm-hmm. So we signed on for that. We just start getting that up and running. So if you want information about it, let us know. We'll connect you with the right folks. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and nowadays it's necessary. It's to the point where identity monitoring is no longer optional.
Well, everybody used to ask me about it, and I was like, I'm on top of this stuff so much, and I know where all the breaches are, and I know, and I'm always paranoid and paying attention to mm-hmm. all of my stuff that I would, normally I just say, I got this, but there's so many now. There's so many. Yeah. I'm afraid I can't keep up.
Well, I've had several different personal things happen with, I haven't had my identity stolen, but I've had things show up on my credit reports from people that I have no earthly idea who they are. Their doctor bills showing up on my credit reports and stuff like that. I've had 2 years, I've had to fight to claim one of my kids on my taxes because somebody else has claimed them before I get to file.
Wow.
And there again, it can be fixed, but it takes months and months and months to fix this stuff. So, and this happened to me twice where, I filed my taxes and then my accountant calls me and goes, did somebody else file on, your kid? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh yeah, somebody did.
Wow.
So yeah, so it puts my entire tax filing into a tailspin, and we have to do a whole bunch of extra work, which costs me more money. So it's a pain. So these things are so commonplace, and a lot of times I don't know that people realize that things are going on, especially when, like we learned at the HIMSS conference, a lot of things are happening to the people that are under the age of 18. They're having their identity stolen, and a lot of times they're not finding these things out until they turn 18 and start trying to get a car or a credit card or something that requires tapping into their credit file. And then they find out, oh, you've had a credit file for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a perfect segue into remember why our new OCR director is so sensitive about this stuff is he's been through this with his dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has. And he talked about that a little bit at the conference. And but for those of you who want to know a little bit more about what we recommend as far as how to respond to the Equifax problem, if you just go to the website and under our podcast notes for this episode, we'll have all that there, but we're not going to cover it in this episode. So let's dive into what the conference had to say. So we started out with opening remarks from Roger Severino, and he was his normal self, kind of putting it down without beating around the bush. So I like it.
Putting it down. Listen to you.
Putting it down. Yeah, man. Because one of the things he started off with that it's funny because I know he listens to the podcast was that he says that providers should not have it won't happen to me attitude. And how many times have we mentioned that? Yeah. Oftentimes I say it's a syndrome, the it won't happen to me syndrome. And so he covered that. First thing out of the gate, don't have that it won't happen to me attitude is what he said.
So that was how he started.
Right. And of course, we're talking about HIPAA security. So he wasn't talking about don't think that an audit won't happen to you. He was talking about, having a breach or having a security incident. Don't think it won't happen to you, or don't have that attitude that it won't happen to you. Because it absolutely will at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You're going to have it. At the minimum, you're going to have a security incident. But chances are you're probably going to end up having a breach at some point. So you better be ready to respond to it. And the second thing he brought up right after that was make sure that you educate yourself about HIPAA. And he went on to talk about, not just the HIPAA rules as they apply, but also the security aspects of it and cybersecurity and security awareness and all those things we talked about. In fact, he said, you should listen to the Help Me With HIPAA podcast. And
oh, didn't see that one coming and should have.
Okay, so he didn't say that part, but it was pretty much, if you read between the lines, that's what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
So,
hey, it's the best free HIPAA education, right?
Absolutely.
It's the best free HIPAA education podcast there is on Fridays.
Yep. And we're the only one out there that offers you a 100% money back guarantee.
There you go. So you like this guy. And so did he impress you even further?
Yeah, he did. He talked a little bit about having a new campaign they call Powerful Medicine Campaign, which is trying to empower patients to go out there and get their records, check their records, use their records. In fact, it's called Get It, Check It, Use It.
Really awesome.
So we'll link to that in the show notes as well. But they're really trying to empower patients to get their health information, to become more aware of what's in their medical records, to follow it. Kind of sounds like their credit rating stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Check it and make sure it's right and fight anything that's on it. So it's a good thing to do because, nobody's going to know if your health record is accurate unless it's you checking it,
Right. Well,
So
they say there's no way to cancel your medical record like you can your credit. So,
Mm-hmm. So then after that, he dove a little bit into the breaches and security incidents and talked about their caseload, which was extreme.
Really?
Yeah, he said that the caseload is up to about 20,000 complaints a year.
Good Lord.
Yeah,
And-
so that's a little more than I have to deal with.
Yeah, your
But-
tickets aren't that bad now, are they?
Yeah, no, not quite that bad. And he talked a little too about the us versus them relationship that he's starting to see, and we've talked about this before as well within the healthcare community, where patients are feeling like it's kind of an us against them with their providers and healthcare companies.
Right.
And he made a statement: "We care about the patients." In fact, at some point during the conference, somebody said something to the effect of, "It's not about HIPAA; it's about." Patient care. And I was like, wait a minute, dude.
I'm trademarked that.
You better slow down. But it was funny to hear that there again, showing that all these people listen to our episodes. So, but one interesting question that came in, and I try to get word for word what Severino said, but basically somebody stood up and asked a question about having more teeth within MACRA and just HIPAA. And then he went on to say that small providers are not paying attention. And this is coming from the guy that's standing up talking, not from Severino.
Asking the question.
Right, asking questions. So he says
All right, gotcha.
they do have the "it won't happen to me" mindset, and they find it difficult for them to follow HIPAA in any meaningful way. So it was almost like he was saying, how can we make these people pay attention to the services we're providing them? So I kind of laughed about it. But what Severino said was pretty enlightening. And basically, he said that what small providers don't understand is that OCR actually has a small provider project where they do, in fact, take a quote unquote hard look at small providers. Oh. And he said they should not think that it will not happen to them, and he's talking about OCR looking at them, because we are absolutely looking at small providers. And he said, actually, we have dedicated a portion of our docket to look at small providers and make sure they understand that if they're doing anything that's violating the law, they're not going to get away with it. And then he ended by saying that he is bringing a law enforcement mindset to OCR.
Whoa. So. And that really speaks to you. I know. I mean, to you, that you see that in a different way almost than you do, just with your own law enforcement mindset. So, quit playing around is basically what he's saying in a very calm way.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though they talked a lot about hospital systems and things like that during the conference, I mean, they definitely carved out a number of time frames in which they discussed small providers, and small providers better start paying attention because they're not overlooking them at all. As a matter of fact, like he said, they have dedicated an entire small provider project as well as part of their docket to that. So they're coming after you specifically as a small provider.
I wouldn't say, and it's not like, oh, we're going after you because we can get this money. They're doing it because every single survey, every audit, everything tells them the small providers aren't doing it, and they want compliance, and whatever they have to do to get it, that's what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, oh, we see we can take your money.
Yeah, and he made a point to say that. He said that, when we're looking at things that are going on in your organization, or you happen to either have a desk audit or a full-fledged audit, what we really want to do is bring people into compliance without enforcement. We really don't want to get to the points where we're fining everybody. And we'll talk about more about that in down the list here about somebody else who talked about that. But yeah, they're just wanting you to comply, and they're wanting you to do everything you can do to protect your patients. And that starts with, and we'll talk about this too, because somebody said, what we've been saying all along is protecting the data and protecting that patient information is the part of the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm. Mm-hmm. And they pointed that out. So yeah, to your point, they're not looking to fine you. They just want you to come into compliance.
Do the right thing.
Yeah. Another thing you said, which was interesting, was they're looking for the big, juicy, most egregious cases out there.
Juicy.
So that was pretty funny. They kind of talked about that a little bit. And when asked what exactly big, juicy was defined as, the reply was, we can't talk about any cases that we're currently investigating.
Well, you got to wonder if it's, some of these potentially, it's got to be one of the ones we've talked about because there's so many big, juicy ones.
Yeah, but it was funny to, I like it when people break it down to a level that, everybody understands. Everybody understands big, juicy. Oh, boy. So after that, we had a keynote address by Russ Branzell, who's president and CEO of CHIME.
CHIME is?
College of Healthcare Information Management Executives.
Huh.
Yeah. So I've not paid attention to CHIME in the past, but I did pay look at some things afterwards because I was like, hadn't heard of these dudes. But he talked about how a breach in your organization, they're seeing it all the time where it's actually killing off the organizations because they're not capable of responding to the cost of the breach. They're not capable of responding to everything that happens around the breach. And so it's putting them under. And this is not anything new for people that are in the IT community. We've been preaching for years that when you look at the statistics of any organization that has a breach, if you're not prepared for it, or if you have data loss, you're not prepared for it, then you have I don't remember the number, but it's like an 80% chance that you're not going to survive the next 12 months.
Yeah, so it's not a pretty statistic if you look at it.
Yeah. And then he talked about how, a couple of years ago, he personally saw 2 medical groups that, shut their doors because they couldn't deal with everything that goes on and the processes they needed to do to get into compliance after a breach. It was just too much for them. And then he talked about how a lot of the smaller and medium hospitals are actually getting absorbed by the bigger ones because they can't afford to do the things necessary to be safe and secure, which is
it's kind of that catch-22 is the reason they can't afford is because they didn't do it a little at a time. Mm-hmm. So now they're so far behind, they have this massive expense to get there. Or is it different? I mean, is it they had been doing it all along and now it's more expensive? Did you talk about that at all? Or, I mean, to me, it seems like what we see or what we believe is that the expense is because you could have been doing a little all along and you didn't. So now this 10 years of where you should have spent, a few thousand here and there across 10 years, you add it all up. Now it's a huge expense. It wouldn't have been if you'd have done it all along.
Yeah, he didn't say specifically, but that's exactly the same thing I see as well. I have a new client, and I know they listen, so I won't bring their name up, but they're having the same issue that we recently took them on as a client, and one of the other companies that they had come in and look at their infrastructure basically told them that they needed to spend, I don't remember what it was, but like $24,000 before they would even take them as a client because
wow.
They needed to upgrade so much stuff. And, I understand there's a validity to having that coming in and doing that. But at the same time, most small providers can't throw out that kind of money all at once. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, chances are that's probably what it is you just let things go for so long. And really what they should be doing, and I don't care if you're a medical practice or you're just a standard small business, you should be putting aside some amount of money every year to go toward IT infrastructure and support and everything else. Don't just ignore it and wait till 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years down the road, and then you decide, now we need to replace everything.
Well, and it's not just medical. You're right. It's not just medical because we try to preach that. I speak at just general business conferences and associations and talk about how do you build, no matter what size your business, how do you build a budget line item for technology and infrastructure? Because it's the backbone of all business almost now.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is. And they're not doing that. When I ask people often, I'll say, what is your budget? What is your IT budget? And typically I get, we don't have one.
Crickets.
Or it's, we kind of, as we need it, we use it. I'm like, well, you're not budgeting for it. In other words, every time something happens, it's an emergency that you're having to figure out where you're going to get the funds to pay for things, or you're fussing with, your IT vendor about whether or not it's necessary to do. And I get it. There's, you got one guy coming in saying that, you don't have to replace those XP computers. You're good. And then you got the next guy telling you it's going to cost you $24,000 to fix everything. So you got to figure out what in the world.
Well, a lot of that is, you don't know that one guy that says you don't have to replace them knows that means they're going to be in there working all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. And so it's kind of one of those things, you pay me now or pay me later, because if you did put in the investment to get everything up to speed, you'd have less support issues, so you wouldn't be having to pay that much for support. So it's a good way to go either way. But
it's always something, David. It's always
something. It is. And then he jumped into talking about how security should not be a competitive industry, and this has nothing to do with the medical providers or the small business, but it's talking more so to the IT vendors and those people who are dealing with the security itself. And that's what they tend to do. They don't share information. They're not fighting on a unified front. It's all about which security platform is better, and they hoard, the information they have so that they can have a competitive advantage. And basically what he said is, we've reached a point now where we're not going to fight on a cybersecurity front. We're not going to fight this if everybody's also fighting each other. It's not doable at this point. They have to figure out a way to work on this as a team.
Interesting.
And so they're coming up with consortiums that kind of are bringing people together so they can make this happen. And specifically in the healthcare industry, they're looking at doing that. And then he talked about how we're getting hammered from cyber attacks at all times, and he gave a little cyber map that you could use and look at, which they're fun to look at because you see all these little things zipping across the globe, and it's almost like people are firing missiles back and forth at each other.
Yeah, that interactive one. Yeah, it's scary. It's a little scary.
It is. The thing about those, it doesn't matter which one you use, and we'll link up one in the notes. They're very, very cool to look at. But they're showing you a very, very small portion of things that are actually happening, because if they showed you everything, it would just be a map full of colors. Just
right.
So don't think, even though you see tons of stuff, hundreds of attacks happening like per second, that's still a very, very small number of what's actually happening.
Yeah, that's one. I grabbed a chart that you can track just a single variant of something and see how it did over a period of time and see the hot spots. And I use that in my infection control scenario. And just looking at that, and I say, okay, well, here's all of last year's flu hotspots. Here's 1 week's 24-hour hotspot for this one variant. And those maps are cool.
Nice.
Yeah. The nerd, my propeller started spinning too fast. Go ahead, David.
So after that, he kind of dove into talking about some cybersecurity insurance, which he didn't give any references to where he got this information and all that. But all I'll say about it is that you probably should be looking and reading your cyber insurance policies pretty closely, because he said that most of the cybersecurity insurance policies out there are not enforceable.
Really?
And that they only covers a fraction of a cost of a large breach. And he even mentioned that the major insurance carriers, a lot of them are dropping cyber, which I've not verified that, but I have no reason to think he would be lying at the conference. But
well, he represents healthcare executives, so I'm thinking he knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, so that's kind of that doesn't make me feel good. When we talk about how you need to make sure you have cybersecurity insurance, and then we hear somebody else go, well, cybersecurity insurance isn't really doing much for people.
Well, it mitigates it to some extent, but part of the problem is you just go, give me a cybersecurity policy, and you don't know what's in it. And that's one of the things we just keep reiterating is get it, but understand it.
Yeah. And he did mention that as far as what it's not covering is a lot of times it's not covering the larger breaches. And he even mentioned too that some of these policies have a clause in there basically that says we will cover the breach if you admit that it was something you did or did not do which caused the breach. And he's like, why would you sign that? Because then you put yourself in legal harm's way, because now you're admitting that you did something wrong, whether you did or you didn't, because you want the insurance company to pay for the costs.
Yeah, that's a little hinky right there.
Yeah. So, make sure you read these things because...
Well, that's the value of having these brokers who specialize in this kind of stuff, because they understand it. Not just, and don't just call up your average insurance person. Call up somebody that spends time understanding all these different policies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So send them to Donna, let her look at them.
No.
Now, one slide that he put up, and I actually did a screenshot of the slide because it was pretty good. It was talking about the priorities for healthcare security, because, everybody wants to know what's the 20% I can do that gets 80% of the problem covered, They don't want to do 100% of it. They just want to do 20%. But I'll go down this list briefly, and we can talk about them if you want to. But the first thing he said is to implement a continuous program of risk assessments and management. How about that?
It doesn't just stop. You don't just do a risk analysis and put it away until next year.
Of course you do not. But, we talked about this in length at the boot camp we just did, where you don't want to just look at, we're going to do one annual, if you're fortunate, we're going to do one annual big risk assessment and then do one big, huge management plan. We talk about doing smaller risk assessments and do them continuously every time something changes. You hire new people, or you change products, or you change vendors, or whatever the case might be. Instead of trying to do this huge, big risk assessment annually or every 2 or 3 years or whatever it is you decide to do, have something that you implement that's a continuous thing. So, and there again, a lot of these things, even going through the whole conference, it almost sounded like people were just rehashing stuff from all of our past episodes.
See, they listen to me too.
Yeah. And then he also said that the second priority was to increase your knowledge of threat actors. To understand. You don't need to understand from a technology level necessarily, but you need to understand a little bit about what type of threats are out there and what they do and how you need to position yourself to avoid them. And that's going to probably take either you having an IT vendor that you can call on that can really break things down into a way that's understandable. which can be difficult to find any IT person that can do that.
And we're aware of that.
Yeah, there's not a few people like me and Don on the planet, but so other things that you can do is maybe you can find a resource that you can understand that can do that, and you don't really need to get into understanding all the tech side of stuff, but just kind of know what's going on, because sometimes it could be a threat that comes out, and you need to make sure you have a certain patch that patches the operating system that helps, mitigate that. Well, if that's the case, you don't need to know all the technical stuff around it. You just need to know, hey, I need to make sure my IT guy is doing this.
Right. I need a patch. Are you paying attention?
Yeah, exactly. The other thing was to maintain your current environment. And by maintaining your current environment, it means make sure you're looking at it, monitoring, checking out what's happening, not just, hey, we've got IT going on and everything works fine.
Is the computer on? Yes, we're good to go.
As a matter of fact, at this past boot camp, it's kind of the ongoing joke that we used every time something would come up. We're like, yeah, but it works though. And so, and we struggle with that in IT, where we're looking at things and we're telling clients, look, we have a lot of issues going on. And they go, yeah, but it works. How can we have issues?
It's that old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it is. So, be looking at that. The next thing was improving your detection and reaction capabilities. There again, talking about IT.
Become a ninja.
And then the next one after that, implement data exfiltration controls. So that one's a little difficult. But you should have a way that you're at least looking at what's going on in your environment to a degree that you can know when things like that may be happening. I hear puppy. So then he went on to say, enhance user education and accountability. There we go. Talking about help me with HIPAA. So make sure you have something ongoing where you are training your workforce, not just about HIPAA, but also you're talking about security awareness. And it's also educate them about the accountability aspect of it, which I thought was pretty good that we don't hear much of. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen if you have a breach, or what's going to happen if somebody is not changing their password or giving it out to other people, or, any of the number of things that could be happening. What does the accountability factor of that look like? So mention that to them when you're talking to your employees.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the number of times that I am just astonished that there's no repercussions for continued failures and I won't go into this, but I will tell you that recently a new employee at a client site, we have certain things in place, but we choose I'm a big concern about emails, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, even though I can do it, I worry about the email accounts getting hacked and PHI sitting in them. And so we encourage people not to do that. And the group I work with, they have a policy. Don't do that. Period. Don't do it. And had a new employee do it. And, really, I listened to the discussion explaining it over again, and they're a new employee, so they just got told not to do it. Then they get told not to do it again, and 24 hours later did it again. I called up. I'm like, y'all should fire that person right now. But it's everybody wants to, give them a chance. And let's just say my eyes were bugging out.
So the last few on the list here is implement active vendor security management, plan for incidents, and address long-term challenges around medical devices. So
yeah, medical devices.
Yeah, and there was a whole section on medical devices they talked about. So we'll get to that. Probably not in this episode, but we'll get to that. But, basically the whole thing was around, we're all in business to take care of patients. And this is part of it. This is part of patient care. And we've been preaching that for the longest time that, it's patient care. Stop looking at all these things as being IT problems or compliance problems or whatever. They're not. They're patient care problems that you should be you should be addressing.
Yeah, because if you're choosing not to do this, you're saying you don't care about your patients, dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the patients are starting to catch on to this.
Yeah, they're like, hey, wait a minute. What about me?
Yeah. I was actually in a doctor's office the other week, and they handed me their HIPAA paperwork.
You sent me that.
Yeah. So the very first thing was, HIPAA spelled wrong. So I went back up to the window and I like plastered it up against the window and I pointed to it and I was like, HIPAA spelled wrong. And the girl was like, crap, I thought we fixed that. So apparently somebody else had pointed it out.
Oh, geez. So see, it's still not done.
Yeah, well, they said that they had reprinted them, but they didn't want to throw away the old ones.
Of course. Yeah, there's always the story.
So anyway. Oh boy. But so they went from there to Steve Curran, who is Director of Office and Emergency Management, Division of Resilience of HHS.
Resilience.
Yeah, he talked about the current cybersecurity threat landscape, which was pretty interesting, and he had a few little tidbits that were worth mentioning, and one is, and then we talked about this a few minutes ago, he said HIPAA security is part of our obligations under the Hippocratic Oath as a matter of patient safety. There you go.
Well, there it is again.
Mm-hmm.
It's about patient care.
Yeah. So maybe they should come up with a Hippocratic Oath.
Maybe we should make one. Let's see what we can come up with there, David. We'll try to make a Hippocratic.
I think we can come up with that.
Yeah, there you go.
So then he went on to talk about cyber hygiene, which you've used the term a lot lately. So it's a thing.
I told you it was going to be a thing.
No, it's a thing.
A thing.
So cyber hygiene and security awareness is one of the biggest things we can do to protect our organizations. Not only is it one of the biggest things that you can do, but it's also probably one of the most cost-effective ones.
Right.
That's why it blows my mind when you start talking to people about doing these things and, we don't have money to be doing all that. I'm like, but this is probably the cheapest thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hello, we have a free podcast here that's all about security awareness. Don't tell them you can't afford to listen to a free podcast.
Yeah, then I don't have time to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just not going to do it.
Well, you gotta spend one or the other. You either spend money or spend time. So, which one?
Both.
Both. Or spend both. And then he went on to say, administrators and IT should be having conversations about disaster recovery frequently. And I laugh about this because in the midst of the Hurricane Irma that's coming Monday and Tuesday, I've had lots of clients calling me wanting to know about backups and disaster recovery. And I almost want to go, you didn't want to talk about this a few months ago, but now all of a sudden it's critical to talk about.
No, really. Drop everything, David, and talk to me about this thing.
Yeah. So it's like everybody wants to know, can you double check my backups and can you make sure the recovery is happening? Can you, I've had a few people that, they want the upper scale devices and stuff like that, I told them about months ago and they weren't interested in it. But now all of a sudden they call me on a Friday afternoon, want to know if I can have it by Monday. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Good that you're paying attention. Bad that you wait too long.
Yeah. We felt pretty good. We called all of our clients along the coastal areas. I mean, we call and say, you activated your plan, you're having any problems, any gaps, any things that you're running into that we need to help you figure out. And everybody's like, we got this. There's a few people, we reviewed some stuff, but it felt good to say, all right, it's getting out there. They're at least, we've had those conversations over and over because of all of these events. And we have fewer and fewer of, what did we say we were going to do again?
Yeah. So interesting stuff. But, so that, that was probably the first half of the first day of the 2-day conference. And,
wow. You got a long way to go on these Sadie Hawkins episodes. Yeah.
So we're not going to get it all done today. So this is probably a good stopping point. But, after that, we did have somebody from NIST to come up and talk about the cybersecurity framework and some updates and changes that are coming. So we'll talk about that in the next episode, as well as the OCR compliance and enforcement activities, which I know everybody wants to know about.
and the audit results, or at least the
Yep.
summary audit results.
Yep. So they talked about some of that. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and just a little teaser, the summary audit results, they have this really cool scoring thing where they say, 1 is, yay, you're doing great, and 5 is, you're not really paying attention.
Yeah.
What is the phrase they use? 5 is, the entity did not provide OCR with evidence of serious attempt to comply with the rules and enable individual rights with regards to PHI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a 5, and they showed that there are a whole lot more people with 5 ratings than there are with 1 ratings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So lots of interesting stuff. And I'll also have a quote from the FTC that I'll share next week that is kind of a wake-up call to people out there.
Well, go ahead and dangle it out there, and then we'll go into details next week. Because what was just give the quick, and then we'll talk about it some more.
So I'm trying to find out who here was speaking. I don't see it. Anyway, basically somebody stood up and asked the person that was talking for FTC and asked them a question about people that are using deceptive consumer practices, such as a business claims or advertises that they are HIPAA compliant, but they can't provide adequate assurances. What should we do about that? Basically was the question. And the person from the FTC said, we would be most interested to know about these companies. As a matter of fact, here's a website that you can file a complaint against them, and we would love to look into it.
So there you go. All of that, we're HIPAA compliant stickers that we've been telling you about, and HIPAA made easy stuff. We're gonna get into that a little bit more on the next episode, where the Sadie Hawkins events continue a bit more. So, unless you have more to add, David, are you
I
done?
don't. Finish up for us.
All right, here we go. I'm going to use David's script and tried to do pretty well with it. All right. So that's our show for today. We thank you for listening. Don't forget to review us on iTunes, and now you can review the apps in the App Store, Google Play, and various other areas around the net. Share the love, people. Share the love. You can always visit us on the web at helpmewithhipaa.com. And please throw in your questions, particularly now while we're having Sadie Hawkins time. Give your questions to David, and we'll feature it on a podcast episode. And remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
Good job, Donna.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.